Hello and welcome to Hard Copy from our channel's television studios in Abuja. I am Kayla Megwa. Navigating politics and governance in Nigeria requires a lot of introspection and willpower. If not, leaders will find themselves in a position where they neglect one for the other. And what's the danger in that? Well, you risk truncating your political career if you don't play the game well. And then you stand to risk being a leader that is rejected by the people if all you play is politics. So the wise thing most of the time is to do both. Are our leaders conscious of this? And do the Nigerian people know to hold their leaders accountable for their failures in governance? Or are we easily distracted by mudslinging? Tonight, we examine the leadership debacle in Nigeria and ask if politics is taking preeminence over governance in Nigeria. And if the answer to that question is yes, what can be done? Can politics be manipulated to where it can lead to good governance? Maybe. We'll also be discussing the state of our nation with a man I now call the Oracle. Striking workers and jubilating falcons, coalitions or strange bedfellows. So many books are being written, and the fears that history is being rewritten to preserve preferred legacies. Are there actual historical facts that can counter curated narratives? We got distracted again. What's the update on the Rivers State situation? Is Governor Fubara coming back? And when? The unexplained wealth bill, which has been pending since the 9th Assembly, and why our lawmakers are hesitant. Late former President Muhammadu Buhari's 120 million votes. And 2027, zoning drama, endorsements, the North and the President. Political columnist and public affairs analyst Dr. Majid Dahiru speaks with us shortly tonight on Hard Copy. Dr. Majid Dahiru, welcome again to Hard Copy.
Thank you very much for having me today.
It's good to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about politics and governance. There are people who are speaking about, and in fairness, they're referring to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu when they have this conversation, saying, oh, the president is an astute politician. But when it comes to governance, it doesn't seem to be delivering on the things that the Nigerian people want. Do you agree with this assertion? And then there's a conversation about, okay, so instead of flogging the dead horse, can we manipulate politics to where it actually now gives the Nigerian people good governance?
I would say we need to maneuver politics away from what it is now to what it ought to be in a democracy. You see, democracy is the best form of government. But because our politics in Nigeria has not been productive enough to enable democracy to yield dividends for the people in form of improved welfare and security, so people are beginning to question the very essence of democracy in the developmental achievements or trajectory of Nigeria. So yes, I agree with a lot of people who believe that our president is an astute politician, and indeed he is. For somebody who grew through the ranks from opposition and found himself on the right of the seat of power, is definitely a good politician. But how about governance? I think governance has to be balanced with politicking. I mean, the base of politicking should be governance. Governance should be at the core of politicking. So all political decisions should be tailored towards improvement in governance. Anything other than that will be negative politicking that continues to, if you like, demarcate or delegitimize democracy and the very concept of electoral democracy, which is now a conversation across the African continent. And for somebody who is quite eager, who is a champion of democracy, I believe he should have made the difference. And I'm talking about President Bola Tinubu, who has a reputation and antecedent of fighting for the enthronement of democracy in Nigeria. I had expected him to make that difference when he got the opportunity finally, after seeing it all.
Why do you think he's not? Because that's what you're alluding to, the fact that he's not.
No, he's not, because there's something that
What's stopping him?
There's something he has not done. Nigeria is not where it used to be. I had, admonished all of them that they contested the 2023 election to say, look, whoever wins this election, you have a very tough task ahead of you. And the first thing will be for the president of Nigeria, of course, leading the pack of Nigeria's political establishment, to take the conscious and deliberate step towards committing class suicide. And committing class suicide here simply means it's like becoming a born again. It's like putting or prioritizing national interest over and above personal, sectional, and partisan interests, and uphold the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and pay absolute fidelity to the Constitution. That has not been done so far because the operators of the system currently are still in the mode of the old order, while Nigeria naturally has moved on with time within the confines of the Committee of International Nation States. And so that is the problem we are facing today. So that refusal or that indecision to take deliberate steps towards committing class suicide by the president and, of course, the entire political class in Nigeria is at the very root of our current existential crisis.
Some people are saying that the president, well, when we talked about politics being, well, you said maneuvered, I said manipulated. Some people are saying that the maneuvering of politics has led to some kind of development in northern Nigeria. The fear of losing the north come 2027 is making it, so for some people, is making the president start to move developmental projects towards northern Nigeria. We're seeing jubilation in the north. Even in schools, for Nel Fund, we're seeing students in schools, celebrating. Bayo Nanuga put up the one for my alumni at Ahmadu Bello University, where some students were celebrating. Is that a success?
Definitely not a success.
Is that the way to get, because if our hands are tied as a people, if someone is more interested in politics than governance, then aren't we left with that, with harassing you, with losing us until you pander to us?
I think that for me is an elite arrangement from northern Nigeria. You see, what affects the man in Karaboda affects the other man in Yenogwa. What affects a man in Birnin Kebbi affects the man in Maiduguri, in Onitsha, and other parts of Nigeria. We are one country, and you can't develop any part of Nigeria along sectional lines. While I do not agree that the president is marginalizing the North in terms of appointments, in terms of patronage, I do not believe so. I believe, for instance, that within the question of identity politics manipulations, as you like to call it, in the Nigerian system, the president is actually beholden to northern Nigeria from the way he appoints people from that part of the country, the way he tries to carry along that part of the country. In fact, the reality is that deploying over 68 of your top aides, led by the SGF, to go and interface with leaders of the North, simply tells you how seriously he takes the northern people in terms of electoral value in this country. However, on the other point about whether he's the fear of losing the North, also comes with an entitlement mentality on the part of the northern elite, who are used to power and who we have observed over time are always making this attempt to take power from the South whenever a Southerner is in power. Now, for me, that's another factor. But the real factor here is, if you are strong on your game on delivery of good governance to the people, that in itself will not succeed. But the problem the president is having is, right now, he has not been able to deliver, he has not been able to improve the lives of Nigerians in terms of welfare, and also improve the security of lives and properties in Nigeria across the board. So there is a groundswell of opposition, both from the North and the South, against not just the president, but the establishment and the status quo. I had expected the president, having experienced a defeat in his own home state in his bid to become president, to realize that the whatever methodology he deployed to lead Lagos State wasn't working, wasn't acceptable in Lagos, and is not likely to be acceptable in Nigeria. But again, that consciousness appears not to have been there. I think he's set in his ways, and he's continuously trying to follow a path that he's used to. And that is why he's facing this kind of resistance. Let me tell you this.
Most older men
exactly.
face that situation.
The greatest danger the president faces going to the 2027 election, the greatest risk, is not even in the North. It's only the South. One would expect that at a time that the president is facing this level of opposition from the North, the ADC coalition, for example, is dominant in the North. Some of his former friends turned foes are the leading lights or the forces behind the ADC coalition. One would have expected that a Southern solidarity, a unity across the South, as we witnessed between 1999 and 2007 under the Obasanjo administration, would have been used to actually negotiate a return to power. Because for me as a Nigerian, within this establishment arrangement, I believe that zoning is imperative and that Southern presidency for 8 years between 2023 is sacrosanct. And that if Tinubu is going to be replaced by anybody, it should be a Southerner.
Not a Northerner.
Not a Northerner. However, the greatest risk, the greatest danger posed to that sacrosanct Southern presidency that some of us stand on the basis of principle is the president, his supporters, and some of those who claim to be supporting him, their divisive activities across the South that has now triggered the tribal war in Southern Nigeria between the Igbos and the Yorubas is the greatest danger, is the greatest risk to his presidency. I'm not even opposition from the North, and nobody seems to be talking about that. Buhari's 12 million vote has dissipated even before he died.
Even before he died?
If you needed to see the level of, I don't want to put it now, mockery and jubilation in some quarters in the Muslim North when the former president died. Because for 8 years, they consider his rule as a waste of time and an investment that did not yield. I'm talking about emotional, material.
It's been curated for us as though he has this cult personality and this cult following.
It dissipated. And that was why he couldn't deliver his own state to his party in the presidential election. So that has dissipated. Somebody else will have to come up and probably captivate the imagination of the region enough to have such following. So anybody that is trying to appeal to a region based on a legacy of somebody who's gone now is not being realistic. And I have thought that the president, me and as to politician, should have known better. For me, within that circle of established politicians, the president need now and urgently to do so, carry out efforts across the southern half of this country to have the region of the south behind him in principle. So that if push comes to shove and there's an attempt to take power back by the north by 2027, thereby truncating the turn of the south, on the basis of a north-south dichotomy, the president can have some leverage to negotiate power. But if, for instance, the southeast decides to say, look, we are being suffocated by our southern brother who's in power now, and try to align with the north, I do not see how our president can be returned. So there's another means of electing a president other than through the ballot.
Is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu going to win the next election in your view?
It depends on a lot of dynamics.
Such as?
For example, if he's able to carry out an overhauling of his policies. For example, I still believe that the policy that has thrown Nigeria into a bottomless pit of economic disorder, economic hopelessness, are the twin policies of subsidy on petrol and the flotation of the naira. If something can be done about these two policies now to restore energy security for the purpose of productivity and social well-being, and if he's willing to actually commit the much needed class suicide as we speak now, and people begin to see a change towards a new direction. Because like I said earlier, there comes a time in the life of every nation when the elite will rise up and say, look, through an elite consensus to say, enough is enough. In our own self-enlightened interest, let's begin to do the right thing.
But that's not going to happen.
It is in his own interest for it to happen, really.
In whose interest?
The president. Because to earn him a re-election. Look, when you have a fringe candidate, I call him fringe like Peter Obi, who claims and who says he doesn't give shishi, but is having this level of following, it tells you that Nigerians actually want good governance. And Nigerians are ready to follow any leader that leads by example. It is cheaper for the president to adopt the route of good governance to re-election than relying on structure that is very expensive to maintain and run. That is the class that I'm talking about. Look, it's a matter of taking the plunge. So I do not know, sitting right here, whether or not we'll win the election, but a lot of odds are stacked against him because for me, the president is going to the next election with a heavy overburden of incumbency disadvantage arising from underperformance and delivery of good governance for the people of Nigeria in the last years. In fact, he has left Nigerians worse than he made them in 3 years. Something has to be done about that. And that's why the race for 2027 is starting early. So early in the day that people cannot wait to see a change of government. And I'm saying he still has the time. You see, I credit the president with one thing, one quality that I know the president possesses. It's a deep and fertile mind that he may not always coherently convey, but he has a very deep and fertile mind. Go and read his inaugural speech. Go and read some of his statements. It tells you a man that is actually deep-minded and very brilliant for that matter. What we are telling the president is redirect this potential you have towards a better Nigeria, realizing that the method you have been used to is unlikely going to work. It didn't work for you in the last election. It won't work in the next election.
We do have to go on a break, Dr. Dahiru. When we come back, you were talking about the president's speech. There's actually a compilation. I actually read it recently. There's a book that has been compiled of all the president's speeches, and it's something. But we'll talk about that and a whole lot more when we come back from this break. So please, stay with us on Hard Copy. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hard Copy here on Channels Television. And if you just tuned in, Dr. Majid Dahiru joins us today, the Oracle. So far, there is no prediction you've made that has failed so far. I said I was going to write a list of things. I think I forgot a list of things in my personal life that we kind of need your help on. But before we get to that, we started our conversation today talking about history. So many books. In fact, last time you were here on Hard Copy, that was what you were talking about, lessons to be learned from IBB's book. For many people, and I do have to confess, myself included, I happened to be alive while he was in government. Yeah. So there were some things that, I don't know if you understand. There were some things that made you say, oh, wait, no, that's not exactly, that's not how I remember it, And so many people are writing memoirs right now. Are we running a risk of history, Nigeria's history, being rewritten to suit preferred narratives of these autobiographers?
I think if I answer this question, that is a very important one. Why people are free to write their own version of history? Ordinarily, it should have been benchmarked against a standardized version of history that can be deemed official, that can be deemed orthodox, so that each time you read people's personal accounts, you can benchmark it and compare with what the official document says. Unfortunately, that has not been done. And from what I've been advocating, that we need to have an officialized history of events in this country. However, that is posing to impossible because of political interference. As we speak, we don't even have a correct history of the Nigerian Civil War. We don't have a correct history of the events in the First Republic that led to the collapse of the Republic, that resulted into a coup, a counter-coup, the Civil War, the years of Reconstruction. We don't even have an official, acceptable historical narrative to all the tendencies in Nigeria. And that, for me, is a sign of failure of the state. So I think going forward, the Ministry of Information, National Orientation and Culture, the National Orientation Agency must begin to come together and synthesize the various narratives in order to sieve out an official historical record that can be bankable, that can be relied upon by Nigerians and succeeding generations of Nigerians.
This will be difficult because the Minister of Information is an appointee of the president and a member of his party.
Again, it boils down to the issue of committing class suicide. You know what that means? Prioritizing national interest over personal, partisan, religious, and sectional interest. That is, you don't have to like somebody to say the truth about the person. You don't have to love somebody to lie about the person. So simply state it as it is. Because you're not doing it for a political party or for the candidate of a political party. You are doing it for the nation.
But a national library is supposed to be where this repository is located.
It's domiciled.
Yes, it's supposed to be something I can Google.
Like the Smithsonian Institute in the United States of America. Something that you can Google.
We don't have that in Nigeria.
I've been searching for a number of people I consider as icons of Nigeria. I can't find any official document. I can't find any compendium about so many people that people need to learn about in this country. A lot of our young children today are growing up to think that the only people that are important in Nigeria are politicians.
Oh, yes.
And I'm saying, no, there are people that have contributed to the development of this country through the arts, through sport, through entertainment, through crafts. They are missing in action in history. The only reason I know them is because I've lived long enough to witness when they were around. Otherwise, they are lost in history. Something needs to be done about that because a country cannot be without history.
People like to talk about politics.
Because it's an institutional problem now.
So let's go back to politics. The African Democratic Congress. People have said this. Well, I heard the presidential spokesperson, Mr. Daniel Bola, say, well, there's no coalition. A coalition means that a party has joined, has come, and you've come together. These are just a few aggrieved people who have moved from one place. He even said it was just a handful of people who've moved. So what kind of coalition is it? It's just an arrangement of very aggrieved old politicians who are hungry for power that has been taken away from them. Should the ADC, well, do they have a chance with these men and women who have joined their party? Do they have a chance against the APC in 2027? Or is it just old people making noise again?
It will depend on a number of factors. On whether ADC is a coalition or not, I think it's just semantics. ADC, as a party now, has described itself as a coalition of individuals. Coming from
so it's not a coalition of parties, it's a coalition of individuals.
It's a coalition. They didn't say a coalition of parties, it's a coalition. It's a coalition. And even if it's a coalition of parties, it's not the physical structure of those parties that will go and meet together to form a party. It's still individuals within those parties. So what you have in the ADC now are people from the PDP, the APC, and some other parties that are coming together to form a party. And one of the things they've achieved for now is what seems to be a slide towards a one-party state, at least within the establishment. There's a division now, clear division. And people are saying want to challenge the president for power. That has created some level of vibrancy within the polity. But how far can they go? Very important question. The same way we are telling those in power today to consider committing class suicide is the same thing we're going to tell those in opposition. Because in a democracy, responsibility on both government and opposition weighs equally. Because if you cannot successfully lead a sanitized opposition movement, you cannot actually lead a sanitized government or a sane government.
What are your thoughts on Atiku?
For me,
because he wants to be president. It
is his right constitutionally, but I think that Southern presidency ordinarily should be sacrosanct. And I would have expected that, given what happened in 2023 that destroyed the PDP, and the PDP right now is in intensive care unit, Atiku Abubakar and any other northerner who feels strongly that the president is not doing well should by now be filing behind a southern replacement for the president.
There's rumors that the PDP is going to zone its presidency to the south.
And that is one of the things that might resuscitate the dead PDP, because it would be a miracle to do that.
Should Peter Obi go back to the PDP?
It depends on what they have in store for him. One of the miracles that can revive the PDP really is the PDP candidacy on that party. But I don't know how they're going to achieve it. I don't know whether the tendencies within the party that seems to have thrown their support ahead of even the election for the incumbent. I don't know how they're going to navigate that very thorny terrain. But one of the miracles that can revive the PDP and bring back to life is not just to zone to the south, but to pick somebody like Peter Obi as his candidate. They would have made an atonement for their mistake in 2023. And whether or not they win the next election, it would have revived the PDP at least back to life.
Let's talk about two more things before we wrap up. In all of the politics and the hula baloo and the up and downs and the endorsements of the president and the coalitions, Mr. Fubar, not former, Governor Fubar.
Governor Fubar, let's just leave it at Governor Fubar.
Kind of slipped through the cracks. Because the last we heard, there was a reconciliation that had happened with Minister Wike.
Yes.
We were all very excited. Oh, that means he's going to come. But when is he coming back? When is this 6 months going to be over?
We don't have the details of the settlement agreement between himself and his estranged godfather. So nobody can really say, even though there are speculations that if he continues to comply with the terms of agreement between when it was actually agreed upon and when the current military, should I say, administrator in Rivers clocks 6 months, probably he might return after the first 6 months. But again, nobody is really sure of what was quoted in the settlement agreement. Again, the lesson to be drawn from this for Rivers people, if you want to avert this kind of happenings in your state, do what other states have done in the past to put an end to godfatherism. Anything other than that, we cannot really say that a product of godfatherism was elected by the people because monies were deployed to procure victory for such a person.
And now that you spoke about monies, we'll be ending on that particular topic. The unexplained wealth bill, I don't think you've heard about this, it's been pending. The EFCC chair just brought it to our minds again recently. Yes. It's been pending since the 9th Assembly. What's the holdup? What's holding the legs?
Maybe those that are supposed to pass the bill
can't explain their own wealth. Why? Well, why? Come on, there has to be somewhere around this. Again, I don't want this to be just something that the EFCC chair talked about and then we all talked about on TV and then he went away.
Go back to the issue of prioritizing national interest over personal interest of today. I mean, you could have all the explained wealth as a parliamentarian, but your children may not. And somebody may have appropriated their own wealth and becomes unexplainable on the other side. So if you have this law in place, in future, all of us will benefit from it. But people are not being futuristic, so nobody wants to probably explain their unexplained wealth, why it is spending, and that speaks volume about the National Assembly. Otherwise, what is so difficult to pass a law that enables the EFCC to be able to prosecute or at least investigate people that cannot explain the source of their wealth? It should be an enabling law.
It would fight so many crimes. Fraud,
kidnapping, armed
terrorism, armed robbery, all kinds of crimes.
So the fact that the National Assembly is dilly-dallying over this matter itself is indicative of the characters that congregate in the National Assembly. And it's an indictment on the most important arm of our democracy, which is the legislative arm of government.
Well, Dr. Majid Dahiru, that's a good place to anchor. I want to thank you very much for being with us on Hard Copy, and good luck with all the work you have ahead of you.
Thank you very much.
That's Hard Copy this week. I'm Kayla Magwa. Good night.